guest hosting this week, and I'm grateful for today's guest. In our second hour, we will welcome a friend, a former colleague, Congressman Emmanuel Cleaver. But to get us started in our first hour, I have one of our representatives in Congress, in the House of Representatives. She's not playing, and she's always trying to move forward. She is the distinguished gentlelady from Ohio. Congresswoman Beatty is a native Ohioan with a strong history of connecting people, policy, and politics to make a difference. In the 118th Congress, Congresswoman Beatty served as on the House Exclusive Committee of Financial Services, as ranking subcommittee on the national security, illicit finance, and international financial institutions. Prior to her service in the U.S. House of Representatives, the Congresswoman was a senior vice president of outreach and engagement at Ohio State University. She was the former head of the Congressional Black Caucus, and I'm honored to welcome her to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Welcome to the show, Dr. Beatty.
Thank you so much, Jesse, my friend. I'm honored to be here.
Congresswoman, I have a lot of questions for you, and I know that you have very limited time, but I want you to feel free to express to our audience, both in Los Angeles and around the country, exactly what's taking place on Capitol Hill right now.
Well, right now we are in the midst of trying to make sure that we move forward, that we don't shut down the government, and that we get our remaining budgets and bills out. As you can know, coming off of this election, it's been difficult. Certainly, we thought and wished that the results would have been different, but they are what they are. Today was a good day for me in Congress. We completed in the Congressional Black Caucus electing our new leadership team for the 119th Congress, and certainly as Chair Emerita of the Congressional Black Caucus, we know how powerful we are. Jesse, we've grown a lot since you served with us. This year we have 64 Congressional Black Caucus members, the largest that we've had. So while we may have been a little dismayed, a little shocked, a little numb, we have shaken that off, and we're ready to move forward with Hakeem Jeffries as our Democratic leader. We also will be going into the new Congress with 215 Democrats. So let me just tell you, we're going to be dangerous. We're going to be standing up and fighting for all of America, and especially Black Americans. We're going to stay focused, and we're going to be united because we still have the people's work to do. And we've learned a lot of lessons based on what happened in the last 2 years.
Congresswoman, my question is what's next? Clearly, Donald Trump is going to be a troubling factor in the national government. He's talked about moving elements and aspects of the federal government out of Washington, D.C. He's clearly coming with a disruptive agenda. How do you steady the ship?
Well, I think what we have to do is one, stay focused on what our mission is, and that is to fulfill the mission of standing up for working people. We have to focus on the real issues that hit the American people, and especially Black Americans. Come on, it's our economy, it's our pocketbooks, it's protecting our children in education. Project 2025 will be real for us. And so we have to be on point. Uh, Hakeem has been masterful. He's setting up committees that will be able to stand up against Project 2025, just as we put together those who fought for the impeachment, because we know what's in store with Donald Trump. We also know that we have to be prepared to find bipartisan common ground when possible, if it means making a better democracy and a better place for Black Americans to thrive. But let me tell you, we will not hesitate to push back against far right extremism. We will continue to review what we can be done. And we're going to come with a plan of action. We have some of the most powerful, the brightest individuals in Congress. And I'd certainly be remiss if I didn't talk about the number of women that we have elected. And I also have to be able to say that we have more women than we've ever had in Congress, 64 Congressional Black Caucus members. And I'm proud to say that 31 of our 60 member now are women, Black
Mm.
women making a difference, women who are lawyers, civil rights leaders, educators, nurses. We represent the whole spectrum of America. When you think about, we represent right now 120 million Americans. And so we have a lot in store. We have a fight, but we're prepared and we're ready. Look, we just finished celebrating what would have been Shirley Chisholm's 100th birthday. And I only bring that up because it wasn't that long ago when we think about 1968 when a Black woman ran for president. And then in 1971, just think about it. 13 people started the Congressional Black Caucus. And if they could do what they did in the 60s and the 70s and getting us the voting rights and the civil rights and getting us jobs, well, I'm going to tell you, we're going to be out there fighting because there's no turning back for us now. And we're going to make a difference that we're ready 2 years from now. I am going to comfortably and confidential and be able to say with confidence that we're going to take back the House and we're going to see the first Black man to be the Speaker in the United States history.
We are honored to have Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, one of the most powerful and influential African Americans on Capitol Hill. When we come forward, we're going to talk with Joyce Beatty, Congresswoman from Ohio, the distinguished chairwoman, about what women must do, Americans, to protect our gains going forward. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
We can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580. Are you an entrepreneur looking to take your business to new heights? KBLA Talk 1580 is your partner in success. Every day, we celebrate and elevate Black-owned businesses across our community. Our KBLA SMB Marketplace currently features The Cookie Dip, Badass Bakes, Hair Concoction, Higher Education Accreditation Consulting, LACC Radiology Technology Department, and Malik Books. Your business deserves to be heard. Let KBLA Talk 1580 amplify your voice and connect you with our powerful community of listeners. Email smb@kbla1580.com today. That's smb@kbla1580.com. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black. Environmental justice is racial justice. Environmental justice is social justice. This is KBLA Talk 1580.
Did you know that 1 in 6 African-American men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer? This month, every time you purchase Gillette's family of products, they'll donate to support Movember. Whether you're looking for Gillette's Best Shave, a regimen to help prevent new shave irritation and bumps, or award-winning beard care products, every Gillette purchase can make a difference in the fight against prostate cancer. Visit pggoodeveryday.com/Movember for details. Exclusions apply.
Martha was ready to switch to a career in IT.
There's always a need for IT specialists, especially with AI coming out and cybersecurity. It's practically recession-proof.
My Computer Career even provides job placement help.
The career specialists, they're very helpful. They care about you as a person. You're not just a number to them. I would recommend My Computer Career wholeheartedly to anyone.
Take the free career evaluation today. Become an IT pro in just months with zero experience at mycomputercareer.edu. Not available in Washington State.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. LA County's new Justice Care and Opportunities Department, or JCOD, is here to support justice-involved individuals and their families. The JCOD Support Center is now taking calls at 1-833-LACJCOD. That's 1-833-522-5263. Available 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., the Support Center is your one-stop shop for re-entry issues and court support. They offer court reminders, lawyers, connections to local services, transportation assistance for housing, court appearances, and childcare. The JCOD hotline provides personalized help to connect you with services that you need. And don't forget to check out justiceconnect.org for more information. Remember, it's free and available every day at 1-833-522-5263. This is a community call to action from KB.
Hi, I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580. We are joined by the most powerful and influential African-American woman, Congresswoman, whether she's a woman or not, one of the most influential members of Congress, Congresswoman Joyce Beatty from Ohio. Congresswoman, I have a question about the significance of the number of African-American women and the Kamala Harris campaign. When my father ran for president in 1984 and 88, he did not quit. We honored him in 2024 in no small measure because Jesse Jackson worked in between presidential campaigns, continued to register voters, continued to build and expand our coalition that in large measure has led to the largest number of African Americans in the history of the Congress. Kamala Harris far exceeded what my father did. She became the Democratic nominee. She campaigned in all 50 states as the nominee to the party. My sense is that Black women are now clearly recognized as the base of the Democratic Party, the base of the Democratic Party in Congress, the base of the Democratic Party in state legislatures, the base of the Democratic Party around the country. And yet when I see who's running for chairman of the DNC, the infrastructure that Kamala Harris won, what are we doing to preserve that infrastructure in the Congress of the United States and throughout the party that Black women now run?
Well, Jesse, let me first say thank you for that question, and thank you certainly for letting us all or reminding us of the work that your father did to lay that foundation. I was with him in 84 and 88. I was a delegate at the convention in Atlanta, and certainly he set the foundation not only for Black men, but also for Black women. He was always inclusive of us. And now, as you mentioned, as we fast forward with Kamala Harris and being our first Black woman, female vice president, and then running for president. That is because women have been out front, standing on the shoulders of so many first, and Shirley Chisholm. But we still have a long way to go. When you look at the Democratic Party, the DNC, we've had Black women at the helm of that. Women like Donna Brazile. We recently, in this election with Joteka Edie, we had win with Black women. I was on that call. I was the one that said to the reporters, we're going to put 44,000. We put 44,000 women on that call because when the reporter thought I was going to say 50 or 100, I doubled down and said 18,000 or 20,000. And we were able to do that because women are engaged. We've been held back
Amazing.
so long. And now here we are with 95 Democratic women in the House Congress. And let me just tell you, with 31 of those women being Black women. When you think about Maxine Waters being ranking and former chair of financial services, the late Eddie Bernice Johnson, we've come a long way since your father started propelling Black folks and letting America know that we too could run for president. We too could be chair. We too could stand up for civil rights. But still, we have a setback. Still, we find that people are uncomfortable with voting for and making sure that a woman, and especially a Black woman, can lead this nation. So we have to continue to be engaged. We have to continue to fight. For the first time on the good news in the Senate, we will have two Black women who were elected in their own rights to stand up and represent us in the United States Senate. And that's with Senator-elect Angela Alsobrook, my sorority sister of Maryland, and my good friend and colleague, Senator-elect Lisa Blunt Rochester of Delaware. So
I just want to add this question, though, Congresswoman, which I know you know the answer to, about the infrastructure of the party. For example, when Dad got finished running in '84 and '88, that's how Ron Brown became chairman of the party. It's also how the South Carolina primary got moved up because Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina saved Joe Biden. South Carolina is where he began the process of committing to put a Black woman on the ticket and made the commitment to appoint Ketanji Brown Jackson to the Supreme Court. So the party infrastructure, there must be a dozen vice chairmen of the DNC by now. There's a chairman of the DNC. We hear names like Rahm Emanuel and O'Malley and others who are trying to come and run a party that Black women saved in 2024.
Exactly.
I feel some kind of way about that.
Well, I join you, Jesse. I feel some kind of way. You know, look, Emmanuel has had his time and his day. O'Malley has had his. But here's what we do know. We have women. They are going to be meeting on December the 12th, the Rules Committee. I know of 3 strong Black women, Donna Brazile, Leah Daughtry, and Mignon Moore, all serve on the DNC's Rules Committee. So as we set these rules, we have to make sure that we don't rule out Black women being in one of those top positions, if not being the chair of the DNC. You know, we
Absolutely.
can't go backwards. And I don't have any problem saying this. Look, we've got to pass the torch. We cannot go back and do what we did of yesteryear and think it's going to work in the time that we're in. And we have strong Black women. We know that Stacey Abrams did a lot across this country in getting people galvanized and ready to run. We have young sisters who are out there in the movement now. Young sisters like Crockett, Congresswoman Crockett, who serves with me. We have brilliant lawyers and scholars. And I think one of the things we have to do, and I'm going to thank you, is not being afraid to stand up and speak truth to power. And
Amen.
you just opened up Pandora's box for me. To be able to say, I'm ready for a new generation, doesn't mean that you do away with old school and the historians. We still need them, but they can't play every place that we have to play, or every position on the team. Sometimes you got to advise and let somebody else be the pitcher and the catcher. And I think that's what you're saying. We have plenty of women out there who can serve in those positions. And the more we put it out there and we're not afraid to say, let's play the hand we have. And that hand has to be one of diversity. We have to have equity, and we have to have inclusion. It's bad enough that the white folks in corporate America are comfortable saying that they're going to do away with D&I, that they're going to take away federal funds for any institution, corporation, or academic institution that uses language like that. Now, come on, this is the Democratic Party, and we know that Black women have carried the vote. Black women have organized and galvanized and did more to make sure that we have health care and adequate education. So why can't we be in a significant number of those positions with the Democratic Party?
Absolutely. Congresswoman, let me tell you, when I first got to Congress, I was in the minority with Newt Gingrich as the speaker, and ended up working out relationships with guys like Zach Wamp and Henry Hyde and others who were political opposites, completely polar opposites. But more often than not, I found myself in the Democratic Party fighting to hold white accountable. I mean, they really want to kind of be over there with the MAGA crowd. They kind of want to be there, but then they can't because there's just enough Black folk in their congressional district that they better not get caught over there. So I want you to share with our brothers and sisters what the dynamic is within the party, because we have our own fight as Black folks to make sure Hakeem becomes the chairman, that we keep our ranking memberships, because they're always trying to say we need some new faces who don't look like us. They try to buck the seniority system, and then they try and turn our agenda into a moderate agenda, which really doesn't work for the needs of our people. Please share some of that dynamic with us.
You are absolutely right. And I'm so glad that you mentioned this because just the other day, I had the opportunity to travel with Hakeem Jeffries, and we had powerhouses sitting with us as we celebrated and went to Barbados this weekend to strengthen the United States Caribbean partnership on security and economic growth and climate resilience. But while we were there, we had this very conversation. And one of the things I said is I sat with the Honorable Greg Meeks, is I sat there with Chairman Stephen Horsford of the Congressional Black Caucus. And I said to them, look, we have to make sure that we control and tell our own narrative about how we're going to lead and how we're not going to be treated within this party. So here's what I've been saying, whether people like it or not. Let's take the DNC because that is our power of control as we prepare for the next 2 and 4 years. So I want to make it clear. While I know the process well, since we don't hold the presidency, we have about 459 DNC members who will vote. And when we take that vote, we have to make sure that Hakeem Jeffries, who is the highest ranking black Democratic person in politics, he is the House leader and has done something that no other black American has done. So we have to make sure that we are putting the new people in the room. And I feel Hakeem Jeffries falls into that position because he's unwavering and standing up for black people. And certainly, like you, Jesse, put a mic in front of him and you're going to get a historian, you're going to get an orator, and you're going to hear someone speak who's not afraid to speak truth to power. And so I'm glad that we're hearing your voice once again. So we
Well,
need
I
to
want you
make
to know,
sure.
I want you to know, Congressman Beatty, that this platform is always going to be available to you.
Well,
Anytime
thank
you've
you.
got to come and you want to say something and tell us in real time what's going on, you text me and it's a done deal. I do have a couple more questions because you're welcome to stay as long as you want. I do understand that you have other commitments and that we may lose you shortly. But I did want to ask this question. I think our brothers and sisters don't understand that we just don't have blacks in Congress. I mean, when we get there, we have to obviously fight the Republicans, now, if you will, the MAGA crowd. But we have a fight within the Democratic Party to keep Hakeem as leader in the leadership position, to keep our chairmanships, to keep the gains that we've made. Or they use these examples or these excuses that, well, we got enough blacks in Congress. If you can just give me a few votes in redistricting, we might be able to get a moderate Democrat who then turns around and votes with Republicans and votes against the very people who you all give campaign contributions to. I bet you have to raise a fortune every year to support the DCCC. I know I did, and about lost my mind trying to raise money for myself.
You're right on target again, Jesse. And I think that's the reason that we have been so outspoken. Because here's the thing I like reminding people. The Congressional Black Caucus now is so large, we can stop just about anything from happening and we can make anything happen. If you take the powerful $1.3 trillion infrastructure bill, it was my leadership. It was working with Jim Clyburn and our 6 chairs of committees that we put together the structure that went, as you mentioned, within our own party to make sure that we were able to not only get dollars for the services to take care of our folks, but we were also able to get the infrastructure. And that was the beginning step, I think, of us realizing that we are stronger when we're together. we have to make sure that we do that with Hakeem Jeffries, because it's not because he's only because he's a black man. It's because he's a scholar and he's brilliant and he is the best person at this time to lead the Democratic Party. But I know we're going to have to pull everybody together. I've been making calls to our powerful black labor leaders, our civil rights leaders, black women, to make sure that we do this when we vote in the new chair of the DNC. We also have to negotiate something for ourselves. Too often, as you mentioned, we give up votes. We raise money. My dues when I was chair of the Congressional Black Caucus in the last cycle was $500,000. I was
Wow.
also a chair of a committee on subcommittee on an exclusive committee. And what people don't realize is we have to raise those dollars and pay those dollars to make sure that we have a voice. Because if
Wow.
you're not in the room, then you can't protect black folks.
So
So
some
we
members of
have,
Congress, in addition to raising money to get reelected themselves, they have to raise another $500,000 to $1 million
yes.
to help somebody else get elected.
Yes. And if you want to be counted, and if you want to make sure when you're in that Democratic caucus and you're not doing that. So those of us who are able and we go the extra mile for our brothers and sisters so we can have a significant number of voices in the room. And that's why our Congressional Black Caucus meetings are so important. That's why electing the leaders that we have elected over the years has been so significant, because it makes a difference not only in Congress, not only in the Democratic Party, but it makes a difference when we go back home that we're able to deliver. If you don't
Congresswoman,
have us speaking up, you're not going to have quality education. You're not going to have SNAP and WIC. You're not going to be able to protect our seniors with Medicaid and Medicare. It is because we understand the plight of the everyday person.
Congresswoman Beatty, we are so grateful to have you on KBLA Talk 1580. Please let your colleagues know that they have an outlet here at KBLA Talk 1580. We are going to be round the clock. The CBC is welcome on this station, and we are honored that you're spending this time with us.
Thank you so much.
In the next hour, Congressman Emanuel Cleaver will join us from the great state of Missouri. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., KBLA Talk 1580, when we come forward.
You're riding with Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Tyreek Wynn with 4 things you should know from BIN News. Funeral arrangements are in the works for a South Carolina civil rights leader. James L. Solomon Jr. was one of 3 black students to desegregate the University of South Carolina in 1963. New York Mayor Eric Adams, who's black, is confirming he'll cooperate with ICE under certain circumstances to deport illegal immigrants. But he wants to know what President-elect Trump has in mind when he talks about mass deportations. Police in Bloomington, Minnesota say they did not find any evidence on a thumb drive that investigators believe might contain confession from O.J. Simpson. The case began 2 years ago when the Bloomington police learned a backpack seized during an assault investigation contained several thumb drives. Billboard is naming Beyonce the greatest pop star of the 21st century. The entertainment magazine made the announcement on Tuesday. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 at BINnews.com.
It's a tough drive in West LA. This crash on the 10 eastbound right at the 405 has been cleared out of lanes, but the drive is a mess out of Santa Monica, leaving 20th Street. In Griffith Park, 134 eastbound before the 5. They're clearing a wreck out of the 2 left lanes. Delays stacking up from Bob Hope Drive. Diamond Bar stall for the 57 northbound at Pathfinder. Middle lane is blocked, and that drive is loading up away from Brea Canyon Road. Stalled Big Rig in Corona, 91 eastbound at the 15. It's the right lane blocked, and that drive is tough away from Main Street in Corona. Ontario on the 10 eastbound at Vineyard. Fast track 2 left lanes are blocked due to a crash. That drive's loading up at Euclid, and a tough one in Colton, 10 eastbound past the 215. Overturned Big Rig in the left lane, delays off of 9th Street.
Hi, I'm Kyle, owner at Blindster.com. And right now, we're offering up to 50% off all our custom-made blinds, shades, and shutters during our Cyber Week sale. Don't miss out on some incredible deals. But hurry, sale ends December 10th. Blindster.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
ESPN has agreed to televise Saturday's SWAC Conference Football Championship game. The title game for the prominent HBCU conference will feature Jackson State versus Southern University. The game will be carried live on ESPN2 at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Jackson State coach T.C. Taylor was named SWAC Coach of the Year after leading the Tigers to a 10-2 record. Southern, coached by Terrence Graves, is 8-4. Taylor replaced Deion Sanders 2 years ago when Deion left Jackson State for Colorado. The winner of the Jackson State Southern game will meet up with South Carolina State on December 14th in Atlanta in the Celebration Bowl. The Celebration Bowl is the game that decides the Black College Football National Champion. That game will also have live national TV coverage on ABC, 9 a.m. kickoff Pacific time. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Yeah, y'all, come on. Come the drums.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we fight the power every day.
Yeah, gotta give us what we want. Gotta give us what we need. Hey.
I listen to KBLA and I love the commercials. I know what the commercials mean. I also, if I'm looking and trying to figure something out, I need something to talk to me that might hit me. And it happens on TV because, you know, every time they show a sporting event, they got the pharmaceutical companies back to back telling people how to fix the sickness on the same stuff that they sell them. So we get it.
Yep, we get it too, Chuck D. And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't black down.
Drop it. Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power. Fight the power.
Tips to help improve basic steps for building a budget in 2024. Building a budget can help you achieve and reach your financial goals. With a budget, you can keep track of your spending, avoid and get out of debt, limit overspending, pay bills on time, and build solid savings habits. What's the best way to get started? Figure out how much to set aside for expenses like rent, mortgage, bills, groceries, and entertainment. Understanding your past financial habits can help you make the proper adjustments for your budget. Adjusting to a budget can take time as you work to find the right balance, but keep working on it. For more financial health tips, visit chase.com or stop by a local branch. This segment is sponsored by JP Morgan Chase & Company.
Hey, John, why so glum?
I just got let go. The company's downsizing. This is the third time in the last 2 years. I'm done with this.
Have you thought about My Computer Career? I've heard they can train you for a career in IT in just a few months, including cybersecurity and the basics of AI. And you don't need prior training or experience. Now that's a recession-resistant career.
Wow, thanks. I'll check them out.
Go to mycomputercareer.edu and take the free career evaluation. mycomputercareer.edu. Financial aid is available for qualified students, including the GI Bill.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. If you need help getting your resume in order, finding job training, or landing a job, we've got 3 great options for you. First, the City of Los Angeles has WorkSource centers across the area offering free job support. The California Workforce Development Board can help you with everything from GED prep to vocational training at no cost to you. On the federal level, the Department of Labor's American Job Centers offer a full range of services for job seekers and businesses alike. Visit careeronestop.org, or for more info, just call California's Help Center or visit cwdb.ca.gov or call 916-657-1440. For the City of Los Angeles programs, go to ewdd.org or call 213-744-7300. All these services are free to help you get your next job. This is a community call to action.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580. Welcome back. We had a pretty amazing conversation, albeit brief, with the distinguished gentlelady from Ohio, Congresswoman Joyce Beatty. I want to put her service in context and then talk a little bit about some of what I think we heard from the Congresswoman based on my experience. I like to begin with a timeline that helps the listeners at least appreciate the historical context within which African Americans serve in the Congress of the United States. These African Americans carry agendas to Washington, D.C. from the local level, and they advance our national interests from one end of the country, quite different than African Americans we elect locally to go to the State House, where those African American legislators are elected to bring our local interests before the states. So let me begin with this timeline. I liken the timeline unto the lens, if you will, of an architect. Before you build a building, there's the pre-construction period. So from 1619, from 19 scared Africans who arrived on the shores of this nation in Jamestown, Virginia, to 1776, let's call that pre-construction. There is no United States at that time. There is a Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776. From July 4th, 1776 until about 1860, I call that the construction of the United States. Why? From the Declaration of Independence, 1776, to the writing of the Constitution, September 17th, 1787, to the addition of the Bill of Rights that did not apply to us in 1791, to 1860, Abraham Lincoln's election to the presidency. Let's call that the construction. Why do I extend it out to 1860? Because during this same period, not only did we have to live through 3/5 of a human in the Constitution and women were not allowed to vote, but we also watched one free state and one slave state added to the Constitution to keep the balance of power in the Congress between the northern states and the southern states. Every time one northern state wanted to be added to the United States of America, a southern state or a western state had to be added as well. What was the central issue? To protect the institution of slavery. In 1854, in Ripon, Wisconsin, during this phase of Americans' history, a little known came into existence to compete with the slave-holding Democratic Party of Thomas Jefferson, founded in 1793, and it was called the Republican Party. The party had one platform: to stop the expansion of slavery into the western states. 4 years later, that platform came together with the ideology of Abraham Lincoln. He said in the Lincoln-Douglas debates that he wanted to stop the expansion of slavery into the western states. During this period, there was a movement called popular sovereignty. That is, if a southern state, a group of southern states' writers made it to the west before northerners, they could establish whatever they wanted in that state. If the northerners got there first, they could establish whatever they wanted in that state. So everyone, as the nation moves from east to west, is rushing forward with the central issue being slavery and race. And so the process of allowing one free state and one slave state to enter the Union at the same time came to an amazing halt during the construction period of the United States with the election of Abraham Lincoln. 11 and ultimately 13 states seceded from the Union between 1860 and the end of the Civil War in 1865. I call that the deconstruction of the United States. Then the process of bringing those states back into the Union, the President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, and his successor after his assassination used the pardon power to bring Confederates back into the Union if they would take a loyalty oath to the Constitution. This process, the addition of the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, and the 15th Amendment, began the period known as First Reconstruction. With the addition of the 15th Amendment to the Constitution, African American men were allowed to vote. And during First Reconstruction, 16 African American men were elected to the Congress of the United States. And then the Tilden-Hayes Compromise, the North withdrew not only troops, it also withdrew the law from the South. The Ku Klux Klan is founded. began terrorizing Black people at the polls. Plessy versus Ferguson is decided in 1896, and that's the end of first Reconstruction. The subsequent period that comes is known as Jim Crow. From 1896 to 1954, this period knew the most violent period of attacks and terrorism on Black people in the history of our nation. Jim Crow is something to be profoundly concerned about. During this period of Jim Crow, Oscar DePriest from Illinois, he delivered a speech. And in that speech, he said, "This is probably going to be the Negro's temporary departure from the Congress. But one day, like a phoenix, we will rise again." By the end of first Reconstruction, there were 0 Blacks in Congress because the Ku Klux Klan and white terrorism in the South scared the hell out of Black folk. And we didn't want to vote. We had poll taxes and how many jelly beans in a jar, how many bubbles in a glass of milk. Ridiculous questions being asked of us before we could exercise the franchise. Until the decision in 1954, Brown versus the Board of Education and the leadership of Thurgood Marshall, that decision that overcame and overturned the Plessy versus Ferguson decision of 1896 laid the foundation for second Reconstruction. Dr. King seized upon that interpretation when Rosa Parks sat down in 1956. 2 years after Brown versus the Board of Education, she said that we have a right to ride the bus wherever we want. It just was de facto and not de jure. Dr. King came to her rescue, and the modern civil rights movement then came into existence with the 1964 Civil Rights Act, the 1965 Voting Rights Act, and the subsequent public accommodations legislation in 66, 67, and 68. That period laid the foundation for Shirley Chisholm. That period laid the foundation for Jesse Jackson to run. That period laid the foundation for Reverend Al Sharpton to run in 2004. It also laid the foundation for Jesse Jackson Jr. to get elected to Congress in 1995. And that laid the foundation for Barack Obama to become a U.S. Senator from Illinois. And that laid the foundation for him to become president of the United States. And that laid the foundation for him to select Joseph Biden. And that laid the foundation for him to select Kamala Harris. And then that laid the foundation for where we are as African Americans. I lay out that history because Joyce Beatty from Ohio, the distinguished gentlelady, is one of the proudest achievements that we've achieved as a people. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. On KBLA Talk 1580. I want every member of the Congressional Black Caucus to feel comfortable on our show because each of them from their respective districts has a story to tell. And when they tell that story, it's going to fit perfectly in that timeline. And that timeline becomes particularly important for all of us as we go into uncertain territories. Are we going to extend second Reconstruction beyond Brown versus the Board of Education? Are we going to extend this movement? Or does second Reconstruction come to an end and bring a second Jim Crow? And that second Jim Crow could be a long and very, very violent period, which every indication suggests that it very well could be. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
Bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
This season, Chevy brings classic pairings, cookies and milk, mistletoe and kisses, and your holiday plans and a new Chevy. Silverado 1500 gives you power and capability with 430 pound-feet of torque to haul your holiday tree. Equinox EV and the all-new Equinox offer award-winning quality and style to see you through the holiday season. See why Chevy makes everything better and brighter. Chevrolet, together let's drive.
Become a U.S. citizen with the help of the Los Angeles Public Library. Get free and confidential information on immigration and citizenship. Visit lapl.org/NAI to find your nearest library or call us at 213-228-7390. That's lapl.org/NAI or 213-228-7390 and start your path to becoming a U.S. citizen with the help of the Los Angeles Public Library. Call 213-228-7390 or visit lapl.org/NAI.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, home of the 2024 Climate Justice Campaign. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to self-care and community well-being. Walk Good LA was formed in June 2020, inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement and the beginning stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. What began as a few minutes of breath work and yoga meditation before protests against police brutality turned into a safe space for the community to heal in hard times. The immensely positive response from the community transformed the momentum into a movement. Today, Walk Good LA is a Black and Brown-led community wellness organization based in Los Angeles. They provide spaces for healing through community yoga classes, guided meditations, hikes, run clubs, and other activations throughout Los Angeles that attract hundreds of members weekly. With the help of Propel and Michael B. Jordan, they now have a yoga and wellness studio in Los Angeles called the Walk Good Yard. To join their mailing list and connect with healing spaces, please visit walkgoodla.org. That's walkgoodla.org. Or find them on Instagram at walkgoodla. This is a community call to action, a community call to healing from KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio that's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580. Welcome back. I want to, after having laid out that timeline, which is something that I think about every single day, and when you understand the timeline and you reflect upon it, it really positions us well for understanding the tasks in front of our next guest in the next hour, Congressman Emanuel Cleaver, our guest from the last hour, Congresswoman Joyce Beatty. And I want to share with you a little bit about what it's like to be in Congress. Yes, I'm African American. Yes, I'm Jesse Jackson's son. Yes, I am a Black male. But when I put my name on the ballot in the 2nd District of Illinois, after having attended North Carolina A&T State University, believe me when I tell you, the HBCU experience, growing up Jesse's boy, exposed me to a lot of our stuff. I know our people. I know our history. I don't need any notes to talk about what I know. But what I did not know, that as an African American in Congress, maybe 40% of my congressional district was African American. I suspect Congresswoman Beatty's district and Congressman Cleaver's district probably have about 48% of their districts are African American. 30% of my district is not in Chicago. It's in the suburbs, largely white when I was in Congress, and a significant Hispanic population. Of the 786,000 people at that time that I represented, every congressional district, every 10 years, gets a census, it gets redrawn, and states are apportioned delegates based upon that census. When I got to Congress, I wasn't only representing Black folk, I had to deliver for my suburbs, and I had to deliver for Hispanic community and the Latino American community and the Native American community, and of course, represent Black people with integrity. That's the real key. To have some sense of the history of our people so that you can represent people with integrity. Joyce Beatty represents people with integrity. Emmanuel Cleaver represents people with integrity. Hakeem Jeffries, our future Speaker of the House, the first African American to ever hold that position, represents a very, very complicated caucus of not just 60 blacks, but a significant number of white men, white women, Hispanics, Native Americans, Caribbean representatives from the Virgin Islands, as well as Hawaii and Alaska. All of these places have representatives, and many of them are in the Democratic caucus. So here's a black man who looks like us, but he has to advance an agenda, the pipeline in Alaska. He has to deal with civil rights in Alabama and Mississippi on the south side of Chicago. He has to deal with housing. And then he has to craft legislation to get 218 votes to get that legislation over the hump, and then convince 51 U.S. senators to get the legislation over that hump. And then the bill comes back to the Congress. It has to be reconciled between the Senate's version and the House's version. And then the legislation goes to the president for his signature. And if he doesn't agree with it, he vetoes it. He sends it back to the Congress, where they debate it all over again or override his veto. So there is an art and a science to being black in Congress. This isn't the Black Panther Party. This is the Democratic Party, because we need 218 votes. 218 votes to deliver for black folk. 218 votes to deliver health care for black folk. 218 votes to deliver Social Security for black folk. 218 votes to attack and challenge health disparities for black folk. 218 votes to increase the number of applications at Morehouse School of Medicine, at Drew Medical School, at Howard University Medical School, at Meharry School of Medicine, the largest minority producing medical schools in the nation. What do the facts show? That when we produce those doctors, when we produce those nurses, they come back to the black community and they serve. The first thing a patient wants is to have a doctor or a nurse that looks like them, that they can identify with, someone who understands what we go through and what we're experiencing physically, emotionally, and otherwise. All of these are factors that are part of the sausage that goes into making a piece of legislation, ushering it through the process to become law as African Americans. Now, that process doesn't just happen in some void or some kind of vacuum. The 1965 Voting Rights Act says that congressional districts have to be drawn in a certain way to allow us as African Americans to have an equal opportunity of winning. That's the Voting Rights Act of 1965. It doesn't give us the right to vote. It gives us the equal opportunity to have somebody to vote for. That's the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Because if an African American runs in an all-white district, all white folks tend to vote just for white folks. They see their children in Congress. They don't see you in Congress. They see their children in the state legislature. They see their children in the presidency of the United States. They don't see you there. Because Democrats and Republicans in state houses draw congressional districts to fit their interests, unless federal law says that African Americans represent an interest that has been historically discriminated against. How you can have a state 40% black like Mississippi, or 38% black like Mississippi or Alabama, and then you get 1 or 2 congressmen out of 7 when almost half of the state is black? Well, that has something to do with Democrats and Republicans in the state legislature saying, draw the state in a certain way, give them a seat because the Voting Rights Act requires it. Or in the case of brother figures who just run out of Alabama. The Supreme Court made Alabama draw another congressional district because the African-American population within Alabama is growing. And why can't a black win? Because it doesn't matter, and in some states, whether you are a Democrat or a Republican. All of the Republicans come over to defeat the Democrat if it's a black candidate. All of the Democrats, a lot of them leave the Democratic Party and vote for the Republican if it's a black candidate. So we have to group African American voters in states based upon their interests, which are unique and which are peculiar, and that lays the foundation for 60 African Americans in Congress. So when members of Congress say that it's time to overturn Brown versus the Board of Education, believe me when I tell you that's up next. Brown versus the Board of Education is the legal foundation for the 1964 Civil Rights Act, the 1965 Voting Rights Act, and public accommodations legislation. If you take away the legal foundation in the Constitution, then the legislation is now unconstitutional. And that's how we go in first Reconstruction from having 16 blacks in Congress to 0. And that's just how quickly it can happen in the new Congress, where we enjoy, as you heard from Congresswoman Beatty, 60 African Americans in the Congress of the United States, the high water mark of African American representation in the federal government. The high water mark. We're either going to go up and increase the number of us representing us in Congress, or we're going to go down, all the way down to 0 is possible. That's what the timeline shows. So we continue to focus. We continue to work. We continue to work through KBLA, Talk 1580. Why? So that we can share good information in an environment when truth is on the scaffold and wrong is on the throne. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.